things just got really bad. Now, as many of you probably know, a man was bitten by his inland taipan about a month or two back. Now, an inland taipan is the most venomous snake on the entire planet. In terms of venom toxicity, they're found in the outback of Australia, as you could probably guess, where everything is pretty much the most dangerous on the planet. And basically he was just messing with it. He was holding it incorrectly, free handling it, not reading his body language, just holding it from the center of his body.
I can control his turn. He wants to turn, but he can't.
And he was bitten, sent to the hospital, spent a couple weeks in the hospital, had a lot of anti-venom that he had to use to save his life, and he did ultimately survive the bite. Now, let's take a look at the consequences now that things have settled down a bit. Well, I said they settled down a bit, but that's actually not true because the city of Florence, South Carolina, the city in which Jeff was recently bitten by that taipan, just recently, as in several days ago, announced that they're looking to pass a bill to actually outlaw almost any animal outside of the everyday cat or dog. Let's take a look at the list. Now, as you can see with this list, this is a very, very all-inclusive bill that would outlaw pretty much everything. It even outlaws cows, equines, so horses, and roosters, among pretty much any other animal you could ever conceive of wanting to own. What makes this bill so bad is not only how inclusive it is with pretty much every animal under the sun, but the fact that it doesn't allow for grandfathering. What that means is that anyone that currently owns those animals as pets or livestock or whatever reason they have them, they're going to have to get rid of those animals immediately upon that bill being enacted, unless they put in some other kind of provision. Now, a grandfather clause is what allows people to continue doing something or continue owning something after said act becomes illegal. So usually when something like this happens with some kind of ban on pets or anything like that, a lot of times there's going to be a grandfather clause so that the people that currently own their pets are allowed to keep them until their pets end up passing away. It basically just prevents anyone new from getting their hands on these animals. But without this grandfather clause, everybody's going to have to get rid of these animals, and it's just going to be pretty much overall disastrous. Now, for those of you that initially didn't understand why the venomous snake community was so upset at Jeff, well, it wasn't because he was just living his life the way he wanted to. We don't care about that. What we care about are the consequences, which we are now seeing today. Now, my last video about Jeff gave a lot of the background information as to everything that went on leading up to the bite and recently after the bite. So if you want to know more about the previous stuff, go take a look at that. But now let's take a look at what just recently happened. And I don't know if this was a joke with the timing or what, but Jeff just recently released his video of the inland taipan bite happening, like within a couple of days of this bill being put into being put out there for everyone to know about.
There's not much he can do. See, he wants to bite. I'm almost there. He knows.
So I don't know if he's bragging that he caused this to happen or what, but the timing kind of cringe. Not exactly what you want, right? The city announces that they're specifically taking consequential action to Jeff's actions, where he ended up getting bit, keeping these animals in terrible conditions and whatnot as well. Right? They're specifically responding to that situation that happened. So he directly caused this bill to basically come across the plate, right? Now, it is possible that it gets struck down. It hasn't been put into place yet, but I would imagine with a city that's reeling from the news and a lot of people that are worried, lawmakers are going to do what they do best and try to save face. So there's a good chance this goes into effect. I would say the only holdup with the bill, the only possible reason why it wouldn't actually get passed is because they have livestock in there, which I don't know how far the city limits of Florence goes, but it's never a good idea to go up against farmers. That's something that's been historically true. So if there are enough farms within the city limits, technically speaking, that would be affected by this, I could definitely see there being a lot of opposition and them ending up needing to give ground in one way or another. But back to the bite video. In this bite video, we could see clearly the terrible handling skills on display. He's literally just holding the Taipan, saying a bunch of nonsense about how skilled he is or how it can't get him. I don't even remember. I'm trying to block it out from my mind personally. But he was literally just holding it, trying to shimmy his hand up to get a little bit closer to the head for some reason. Apparently he doesn't know that snakes can pretty much turn around unless you've got them directly behind the head. So I don't know why he was in like the middle of the body to like front third. That's like probably the worst spot you could possibly hold a venomous snake, to be honest with you, because you can maintain some level of control from the tail end, and you can maintain decent control if you have the head properly secured, but that is kind of the no-go zone that he was in the entire time. So I have no idea what he was thinking there with that. Pretty terrible if you ask me. Now, because of Jeff's inability to accept responsibility for what he's done, right? He seems to have a disconnect with understanding that he is the direct cause for this bill going into place. He is the direct cause for his previous animals that he had being euthanized because, as many of you probably know, all of the pets that he had, all the reptiles that he had at his house at the time of the bite were euthanized, right? And that's not a decision that the state made. That's a decision that his family made. I believe his father actually gave the sign-off, the go-ahead, for them to euthanize his animals. So that's on him, right? They didn't barge in there and just start killing animals. That's not what happened. But he hasn't taken responsibility for that. He's mad at them for doing that. Okay, sure, but maybe don't have your animals in plastic containers sitting around on the floor with flies flying around and dead stuff, dead matter or organic matter lying around to the point where your place is completely infested with flies, right? That's not generally a good way to keep animals, right? Not good health conditions. So those animals are not doing too hot, or weren't doing too hot. Now they're gone, right? They're completely gone. And there's a lot of speculation here to his keeping abilities, right? A lot of us are well aware as to the terrible conditions he kept these animals in, but he still has a almost cult-like following that doesn't seem to understand how terribly he treated these animals. So if only we had a way to see one of those animals, see what kind of health condition it's in, and actually be able to extrapolate and make an informed decision about how well he keeps his animals. Oh wait, that's right. He had a couple of boom slings that weren't at his house, and I managed to get my hands on one. So how about we go take a look at his disease-ridden, dying boom sling, and let's see how healthy it is. Let's see how good he was keeping these animals firsthand, so we can go ahead and make sure everyone's up to speed on how good he was at keeping these animals. So here we are. This is the boom sling that used to be owned by the one and only Jeffrey Leibowitz. So let's take it out of the container so you guys can actually see just how healthy this animal is. Truly the epitome of health. Let's open this up. And wow, what a healthy snake. Holy cow. This animal is such a specimen. Okay, oh wow. Yeah, no, that's a healthy looking boom sling right there. Wow. Look at you. Look at you. Look at that. Absolutely unbelievably healthy. You can see that is a snake that has a lot of extra mass on it right there. Doesn't look like it's consuming itself at all. Oh wait, it's definitely consuming itself. This snake is horribly mistreated. Absolutely terrible. It's really sad to see, to be honest with you. Really sad to see just how terrible this snake looks. I mean, the spine is so protrusive, it just looks disgusting. This is an animal that looks disgusting. It looks super unhealthy. And yeah, so there you go. This is proof that he mistreats his snake. First-hand proof, not coming from anyone else. This is one of his animals. This is one of his freaking animals right here. Wow, look at that. That is horrible. You can see the snake is moving extremely slowly because it has no energy, because its body is consuming itself. That's why the snake is just so lethargic, barely moving, okay? No energy whatsoever. So this is a guy that bragged about his ability to handle these snakes without dying, right? In his skill level. Well, you see, when you don't feed your snakes, when you keep them cold, and when they're this unbelievably unhealthy, guess what? They're a lot easier to handle because they have no energy. So yeah, maybe not something worth bragging about. And if you guys are wondering, hey, how do we know that boom sling is actually Jeff's? Well, guess what? He confirmed it himself. When it leaked that I had bought it, he messaged one of my moderators and basically just proved that it was his boom sling. So that is in fact his boom sling, as confirmed by the Jeff himself. Now, not only was Jeff's ability to keep animals terrible, his ability to handle his animals terrible, his judgment when it came to handling these animals terrible.
He knows.
But he was also just not a nice human being. And the reason I'm actually saying this is because someone has to say it, right? I thought maybe that the bite would change his mind, change his personality a little bit. He'd have a little bit of regrets, at least when it came to what he did. So, no signs of remorse whatsoever. So I feel like it's only right to go ahead and show. I'm not even going to say things about him, okay? We're going to show on screen some of the things that he's publicly said online. Yeah, let's take a look at some screenshots, everyone. So he said some pretty nasty things about me specifically online, as well as many, many, many other people. He says a lot of really disgusting things about women as well. Right? This is a teacher. This is a public school teacher, guys. I don't know if you want a guy like this teaching your children Spanish, but for me, I'm going to put him into Chinese or something instead, because it's just not worth it, right? Don't want him around my children personally. I don't have children, but if I did, right? Not the kind of influence I want on them in any capacity whatsoever. So, yeah, he said a lot of really bad things online, as I'm sure you can probably tell from these screenshots that you are being shown. But yeah, so in conclusion, right, Jeff is the complete antagonist not only of the reptile world, but also of the exotic animal community in itself, right? The entire one. As we can see, the consequences of these actions that he made have now exceeded just the limits of the venomous snake community, or the reptile community as a whole even, but has moved on to the greater scale of the entire exotic animal and apparently livestock animal communities as well. So definitely a cancer or tumor amongst the community that we really need to get rid of. So for those of you that vend shows out there or end up parting with animals for any context or any reason, how about we don't feed his obsession? How about we don't feed his ego? And how about we don't sell him any more animals in the future? Just a thought, right? Just a complete thought. And maybe, who knows, maybe he learned his lesson. Probably didn't. Probably didn't. He said when he was live streaming in the hospital, he said, hey, I'm done. No more venomous snakes for me. I've got word that he might be buying some. So definitely not good, especially if he's now just blatantly lying like that. That's really just bad. So he's just leaving disasters in his wake, right? He left Florence, doesn't live there anymore to my knowledge. Word on the street was he was heading up to Virginia. And he just left Florence behind. Now the people of Florence are going to pay for his actions. They're going to lose their pets, their livestock. It's pretty terrible. And for those of you that are wondering why I specifically am so mad about this whole situation, well, I just moved to South Carolina, so guess what? These things are possibly going to affect me, okay, right? The city of Florence, where this happened, is making those laws potentially, right? Almost certainly. So who's to say that the greater state of Virginia doesn't follow suit? In fact, I heard that they are. Word on the street is we're going to get shafted come January, which is not fun for me because my entire livelihood revolves around these animals. My passion is what I do. I love educating others about these animals. I love working with them and interacting with them myself and learning more about them. So how am I supposed to do what I do after moving across the country, right? Do you know how stressful it was to move 50 venomous snakes across the country, plus a bunch of other reptiles and cats and other stuff? Do you know how much of a pain in the butt that was? That was horrible. It was terrible. It was unbelievably stressful. And you're telling me that after I just bought my new house, the house that I want to grow potentially old in, have kids in, have a family in, have my animals in, I'm going to have to give that up now and move somewhere else to keep my animals potentially? Because guess what? If the state follows suit, doesn't have a grandfather clause, doesn't have a permit system, which is just illogical, right? Why would you not have a permit system? Makes no sense. It's just a lazy thing to do, right? The excuse for that would be that they don't have the funding or the time. Well, it's your job to have the time. Create the time. Create a department. I don't care. Okay, you don't think that people will pay taxes to create a department? Like what? It's just illogical. The people that want to keep these animals will pay a little bit to keep these animals, okay? If you have a permit process and you charge, I don't know, $200-$300 per permit, and there's a few thousand people in the state that would need to get a permit, guess what? You now have several $100,000 of funding to put into that program. So the not having enough funding excuse isn't really a valid one, but it's what I've heard they're going to use. But I hope you guys that didn't know about the situation are more aware now. I hope those of you that were aware of the situation are more knowledgeable about it now. And if you want another video of me being pissed off at Jeff, who knows? Maybe you'll get one. Later, everyone.